Hi, good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, especially escaping the Delhi monsoon fury. Bangalore seems like a real welcome change. So thank you so much to WMG for having me here. It's a real pleasure and an honor. But I must warn all of you, I'm always only invited once to any event. So there was a very dear friend, former BJP Rajya Sabha MP. He said, please give a talk. We are organizing a one-day conference on Dynasty, the Scourge. And obviously the intention was to beat the living daylights out of Congress, understandably so, because they started it all. It was inaugurated by Mr. Devendra Fadnavis. He lit the lamp and everything, and my turn came. And everything was being live telecast, YouTube and everything. And I, first 5 minutes, I rattled out 94 BJP MPs and MLAs who are first generation dynasts. So the YouTube wali coverage bhi band ho gayi thi usme. Then very recently, there was an event I was invited to. It was basically politics and beyond. And I went there and I said, look, I'm absolutely fed up of beating the living daylights out of politicians. Look, we all do that day in and day out. It's time to vent your ire on judiciary and the judges. You know, the things are really rotten there, and 5 crore cases are pending, 38% judicial positions are vacant, and there is nepotism, there is so much of psychophancy, and there's so much of corruption in judiciary, and there is collegium system. There is I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and this has to change. And I said all that, and I went back to the dais and I took my seat, and the person sitting next to me was the Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court. I forgot my car there, I took an Uber and ran from there. So I'm warning you, and to make matters worse, today my brother-in-law is also in the audience. So, he might report things to my wife, I might not be allowed to go back to Delhi. So if any of you have, one doghouse for me tonight, I'll be very grateful. No, but to be honest, it's a real pleasure. And I thought so there's a alarm clock ticking out here already. I have 47 minutes. What I thought, I'll spend the time today, and I'd like to say what I have to say, and then leave a few maybe minutes, 10, 15 odd minutes for a wonderful interaction with all of you. I thought what I want to talk about today is, which is seldom talked about, especially in today's climate, where everyone's rather euphoric about India, understandably so. But I'd like to talk about something which I believe is fundamental to success, and that we kind of ignore because, as I said, we are in this euphoria of things that are going well. And of course, as the adage goes, success hides failures, And that's true, and it is human proclivity, of course, to talk about always things that you've been successful in and hide your failures, not talk about them. And if you're a politician, then you will only talk about your successes, not talk about your failures. And if you've got 99 seats, you would project you've got 99 out of 100, not 99 out of 540. That was just a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of people, I think, automatically see the glass as half full, And I think if we are to move ahead, we ought to start seeing the glass half empty as well. That's the only way we would make it, up to the brim. But having said that, I think the truth is also there that we have a lot to cheer about. We've had, to be honest, a lot of successes. If we were to look at when we got independence, for example, a few parameters, in 1947, our life expectancy was 32 years, can you believe it? Today it is 72 years. In 1947, when we got independence, our literacy rate was 12%. Today it is 86%. Our poverty rate was 72% in 1947. Today it is 4.5%. And the most startling fact was that in 1947, our infant mortality rate was 160. That is, out of 1,000 babies who were born in 1947, 160 did not survive. Today it is 24. So yes, we have a lot to be happy about. We've had successes. And if you were to look at, condense it a bit, not extend it to 75 years, but look at the last 10 years, then I think our successes have been rather stunning as well. To give you again, a few data points, in 2014, the percentage of population that suffered multidimensional poverty was 29%. Today it is 11%. In 2014, our inflation was 10%. Today it is 5%. Our GDP per capita in USDs was $1,500. Today it is $2,500. So on and so forth. There's so many others. You had 5 cities that had metros. Today you have 20. In 2014, we had 74 airports. Today we have 148. Our foreign exchange reserves in 2014 were $300 billion. Today it's $650 billion. I think the point I'm trying to make is that in the last 10 years, a lot has happened. That is good. The direction is good. If you want to have more data, we had 21,000 kilometers of railway lines electrified. Today it's 63,000. I can go on and on. $7.5 billion was our electronics exports. Today it is 3 times that. Highways, the length of highways that we built in the last 70 years, we've built half of those in the last 10 years. That's why I called Gadkari as not human but alien. And something which the Bangaloreans would possibly know, in 2014 we had 350 startups. Today we have 118,000 startups, And those who take time off mountaineering and go into wealth management, they would identify with this. In 2014, we had AUM, assets under management, as far as mutual funds are concerned, 9 lakh crores. Today it is 63 lakh crores. So yes, we have a lot to be happy about the success. And if we were to scrunch it further, from 75 years to 10 years to 1 year, then the success has been, I would say, even more spectacular. Our GST monthly collections have been highest ever, 2.1 lakh crores very recently, I think May or June. Our exports have been the highest ever, $780 billion. Our vehicle sales have been the highest ever, 4.1 million. Stock market is at highest ever, 82,000, 81,000. So on and so forth. So inflation has been at 11-month low. Our what is it called, PMI, which monitors the manufacturing, has been at a 16-year high. Our inequality Gini coefficient has been one of the lowest ever at 0.4. So we've had successes. So yes, you might say, you wretched fellow, all you're looking at is glass half, empty. What's wrong with you? Look at all the successes. But then, why is it that despite all these wonderful, successes and these facts that I have told you, why is it that still 300 million Indians live on 60 rupees a day? That's almost the population of America. Less than $1. Why is it that 150 million children are out of school? Why is it that 34% of all Indian under 5 children are chronically malnourished and stunted? Why is it that still we have 7.5 million children working as child labor? 18 million Indians working as bonded labor? Why is it that 20% of all poor children have never been vaccinated? Why is it that our GDP per capita is still ranked 136th in the world, below Sri Lanka? So yes, we've had successes, But unless we realize that we are at an inflection point and we need to take off, unless we realize what is wrong, why do we have such extremes of successes, and at the same time, the last 5 or 6 data points that I've given you that are clearly troubling, unless we realize the reason for that, I'm afraid we would just be taxiing around the runway and not take off, because I think what's happened is we need to jump from the treadmill to the travelator. The thing about treadmill is that if you cut off the last 10%, then you give the impression that you are walking towards a destination, but of course your displacement is zero. How do we move from treadmill, that's what we've been doing, getting fitter and fitter and fitter, but on to the travelator, going somewhere. And I think understanding that is important, and I believe why we possibly might miss this inflection point and taking off from there if we're not careful is, of course, it's my thesis without being patronizing, is because we are a confused lot. And I don't mean it in a very disrespectful way, because I include myself in it. We are confused as a state, and we are confused as a people. And I think for the next 30 odd minutes, I'd like to talk about this cloud of confusion that has enveloped us, as I said, as a nation, as a state, and as a people. And unless we address that, I'm afraid, as I said, we are still going to be talking about, 2047 would still be a distant dream if we want India as a developed country. Because remember, in 1994, one of our greatest Indians, Dr. Abdul Kalam, wrote a wonderful brochure of Vision 2020, which he said that by 2020 we would be a developed country. 2020 came and went. We are still very much a developing country, as is exhibited by our GDP per capita. So things clearly need to be set right. And here is where I'd like to, before I begin elucidating this, like to have a show of hands, because I think, let me first concentrate on the confused role of the state, and then I'll come to the confusion, cloud of confusion that surrounds us as a people. So how many of you, if I were to ask you, which is that one government or state policy since independence that has helped our economy grow, our finance grow, our nation grow economically the most? What would you say? Anyone? Just one policy. Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. 1991 economic liberalization. If I may give more detail to that, our foreign exchange reserves right now are $650 billion. In 1991, they were $0.6 billion. We mortgaged 67 tons of our gold. We loaded it onto the ships. They were about to dock in England. And then, of course, the rest is history, as they say. P.V. Narasimha Rao, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and more importantly, the World Bank and IMF saved us. So yes, you're absolutely right. Anybody else? One policy that has helped economically the most? Aadhaar card? Aadhaar, yes, right. Yes, very good. Anything else? Ma'am? Energy policy, very true, absolutely, yes. Jan Dhan, brilliant, absolutely. 600 million bank accounts have been opened in the last 10 years, absolutely. Sir? GST, fantastic, absolutely. There's one person who loves taxes, so I think. Hello, Ms. Sitaraman, yes. What's your name, sir? No, he doesn't want indexation. No, don't worry about it. Yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure. Anybody else? Make in India, yes, although the opinion is still divided as to how much of a success it's been. So all of you have given the perfect answer, the right answer. Every one of these answers that you've given is absolutely true. These are all things that have helped, as I said, answer the question that I asked. But did you see one thing, one common thread in all the answers? They are all related to economy. They're all related to the growth, economic growth of the country. All the answers that you gave, GST, economic liberalization, Jan Dhan, everything. What if I told you that the one single policy that has helped our country economically grow the most is actually midday meal scheme. Every single day, 130 million school children, 130 million Indian children go to school. Every single day. Why? Because their parents send them to school so that they will get nutrition, mandated by the Supreme Court to be minimum 450 kilocalories. And in that process, they would be healthier and they would be wiser because they would get education. Every single day. This is what the state's role should be. This is what has helped our economy grow the most. And you know who founded this, who got this idea and implemented it? K. Kamraj. And he never even went to school. So next time all of us think that we must need an educated, a graduate, undergraduate, a PhD, a doctor as our politician, think again. Here is a man who never even went to school and who implemented a policy that is, in my opinion, the greatest policy by any politician living or dead, that has helped our economy grow the most. And this is a lesson. What is the role of the state? The role of the state is to make your workforce, labor force, healthier, wealthier, wiser, and more flexible. That's it. The role of the state is not to use that workforce or labor force. The role of the state is to make that labor force so that you, the wealth creators, use it. And this is where I want to spend the next 20, 25 odd minutes in elucidating that the state hasn't understood its role. This is the problem. And I'm not blaming you at all, because I was in the same boat when somebody asked me earlier, what is the one single policy that has helped our economy grow the most? And I would obviously give the economic policy reasons. Banks, economy, liberalization. But it is this. The state's role is to create an active labor force. Right now we have 585 million Indians as our active ready labor force. The role of the state is to make them healthier, wealthier, wiser, more flexible, so that you may use it, wealth creators may use it. State is not a wealth creator. State's role should be wealth enabler. Whenever state has tried to be a wealth creator, the state has succumbed to be like Soviet Union or Cuba or Venezuela. History has shown us that. And this is where I want to spend the next few odd minutes telling you that we've been so confused about it, that these 4 parameters that I've talked about, we've actually, rather than go forward in these directions, healthier, wealthier, wiser, more flexible, we've gone in the opposite direction. We've not understood what the state's role is. Let me begin first with the 4th that I talked about. How to create a more flexible, more adaptable workforce. Let me give you 2 examples here, and this would be very clear. Let's take the example of agriculture. So India has a ready labor force of 585 million Indians. 44% of that labor force, which is around 250 million, 44% of that labor force is involved in agriculture. A sector that contributes only 14 to 15% to our GDP. From production to purchase, everything is medieval, almost archaic. In the West, it's 2% of the labor force that is involved in agriculture. Even in middle-income economies, it's not more than 2 to 3%. Out here, we have 44% of our labor force that is involved in agriculture. And the result of that, 70 million hectares of agricultural land out of a total, which makes it almost 40% of the available agricultural land, has been destroyed by floods or droughts in the last 6 years. Only 14% to 15% of the GDP is supplied by this sector. 110,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years. Do you know of any sector, economic sector or otherwise, where 110,000, more than 1 lakh people involved in that sector have committed suicide? 81% of the farmers and croplands are not insured. This is the situation. And when we talk about going further into the details of how we are handling this sector, catastrophe is one word to describe it. Where do I even begin? I talked about the how dependent we are on the elements, how destroyed the sector is because of the elements or lack of it, floods or droughts. Let's talk about productivity. In terms of productivity, we are at our world's lowest. When you talk about the peak, for example, we grow 4,000 kg of rice per hectare. That is 45% of the maximum capacity which other nations grow. In maize, it is 25 to 30%. We are the world's second largest consumer of chemical pesticides, 60,000 tons. The food export refusal, as far as America is concerned and India is concerned, ours is 7 times more than even China. I mean, I can go on and give you these statistics, but the point I'm trying to make is that where is the flexibility? This 250 million odd, 40% of the labor force is involved in a sector which is staring down the abyss. And what is the state doing? The state is funding more and more and more of the same. Let's talk about sugarcane, for example. We are the world's second largest producer of sugarcane. Every year we produce 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. Now, sugarcane is, as you all might know already, of course you do, is a water-intensive crop. It requires only 9% of the arable land, but 72% of the irrigation water. The amount of water needed to grow 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane is 1 quadrillion liters. I didn't even know the word quadrillion existed. I thought things finish after trillion. So I calculated. That's the amount of water that is present in 10 Ganga Sagar dams. That's the amount of water, drinkable water, not ocean water, that we need, that we use to grow 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. And sugar prices, they have reduced by half in the last 6 years. And yet, every politician, every political party keeps on increasing the MSP equivalent of sugarcane. It is in their manifestos. They say we are proud to buy sugarcane off the farmers, to increase that amount more and more and more. Our water availability per capita has decreased by 40% in the last 40 years. It used to be 3,000 cubic meters, now it's 1,400. According to United Nations, the water availability required per capita for civilized living, it's a term, official term, is 1,700. We are at 1,400 right now, so we are uncivilized. 3,000 billion cubic feet of Godavari water in the monsoon goes into the ocean every year. 3,000 billion cubic feet. The water requirement for the entire state of Tamil Nadu is 1,800 billion cubic feet. Every year, 78% of river water goes into the oceans. Supreme Court has said we will collapse if this happens like this. We cannot afford this. We need to link rivers. There have been geologists, ecologists, they've report after report for 25 years, from Indira Gandhi's time to Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time to Modi's time. And yet we have not linked the rivers that we must. There is no such system to use extra water where floods are to be diverted to where the drought is. And the fact of the matter is that one chief minister, Mr. Devendra Fadnavis, said we cannot go on like this. I'm sorry. We would be devastated. We already have water trains going and politicians feeling so proud that they are cutting ribbons and launching water trains. There should be river linking projects that should be inaugurated. So from henceforth, any farmer who wants to grow sugarcane will have to take government permission in Maharashtra. It's an excellent thing. Within 3 months, he had to retract that order. I would name the politician. He is a Padma awardee and a very exalted one and helps the present government dispensation from time to time. There was molasses to be made through sugarcane. There was liquor industry. This is how the state is thinking. Forget about 30, 40 years, forget about 2047. We aren't even thinking 3 years ahead. Is this the role of the state? To keep on placating a sector, more and more destroying it without even looking 5 years ahead? I'll come to this when it comes to the role of the citizen, because I'm not finished yet. But let me come to the other sector. And you will realize what the role of the state is and how confused the role of the state is. A small city like Paris, one city, attracts 25 million foreign tourists every year. One city. India, a population of 1.4 billion people, attracts 11 million tourists a year. Paris, 25 million. India, 11 million. We are an 8,000-year-old civilization. We have hundreds of languages to impress people by, thousands of cuisines. We have 42 World Heritage Sites. Greece has half those, and yet we attract 1/3 of the foreign tourists that Greece does. Only 30 million Indians are directly employed in the tourism sector. We should be having 300 million Indians employed there. Tourism as a sector contributes only 2.6% to our GDP. It should be 5 times that. The Sun Temple at Peru, Sun Temple at Peru attracts 1.5 million tourists every year. The Sun Temple at Konark attracts 9,000 foreign tourists every year. This is the situation. We haven't even realized it. Bodh Gaya should be the Vatican of the East. It is the place where Lord Buddha attained enlightenment. We have the Bodhi tree. We have such magnificent city. We have 535 million Buddhists around the world. Japan, South Korea, China, they would be falling over each other to make Bodh Gaya the Vatican of the East. And yet, the annual municipal budget of Bodh Gaya is less than the production budget of the failed movie Adipurush, 500 crores. Only 0.25 million foreign tourists visited the Bodhi tree. 0.25 million. And number of Buddhists in the world, 535 million. This is the situation. We aren't even thinking about, the state is not bothered, it's not thinking about what's going to happen. UAE, a country UAE has more hotel rooms than India. China has 20 million hotel rooms, we have 0.2 million hotel rooms. And of the hotel rooms that we have, we charge 5% GST on it. But the restaurants are charged 5%. But if in a hotel you have a restaurant that has a room as well, you charge 18%. The hotel industry is crying out. Nobody is loaning them money. The finance minister has realized this, has said, because of low return on investments, nobody is giving loans to the hotel industry. Less rooms than UAE. And yet we seem to be carrying on. There is a 60% gap between the supply and demand as far as labor for tourism sector is concerned. 60% gap. And here I talk about 300 million being involved in, recruited by tourism industry. In 2015, the Prime Minister launched this Skill India mission. The idea was to have 400 million Indians skilled by 2022. How many were skilled by 2022? 14 million. The plan was 400 million. We managed to skill 14 million. India has had an Apprentice Act since 1960s. There are 0.5 million apprentices. Our labor force is 585 million. The number of apprentices are only 0.5 million. Has the state realized this? I'll tell you one thing, what the state has realized. The state owns and runs 495 hotels. All of them are loss-making. The only revenue they make is during or after the elections when they have to shuttle the politicians from one resort to the other. That's the only time they're occupied. The point I'm trying to make is that these are the low-hanging fruits. Agriculture, tourism. And what is the state doing? The state is not plucking the low-hanging fruit. The state is watching it rot. And if we keep on watching it rot, how can we take off from this inflection point that we are admittedly, truly right now at? Let me quickly turn to, because I think I don't want to run out of time. Even the alarm clock has been switched off. But let me come to the other three factors that I talked about. I've talked about the flexibility, adaptability. Let me talk about a wiser workforce. One of the most important parameters in a workforce is that it has to be educated. That's where the flexibility stems from. That's the core. Let me give you a few examples of what the state has achieved, and then all will be clear. We have 1 million teachers less than what we need. There is 19% vacancy. In the villages, it is 64% vacancies. 8% of all Indian schools are single teacher schools. There is 25% absenteeism among teachers. There is 60:1 pupil to teacher ratio in some states like Bihar. If you go a little bit higher than that, you would realize, as I said, 150 million children are out of school. They should be in school, but they're not. 150 million children. That's more than the combined population of UK and France. If you look at high school students, 45% of all high school students cannot do a simple addition and subtraction sum. Half of those high school students cannot write a sentence in English. This is the situation of the schools. What of when millions, tens of millions of these school children graduate to universities? We have only 1,100 universities. The gross enrollment ratio is only 25%. None of those universities feature in the top 200 universities of the world. 48% of all Indian graduates are unemployable. Let me repeat, unemployable. I'm not saying they are unemployed. They cannot be employed. They don't have the requisite skills. 80% of all Indian engineers are unemployable. 10 years ago, 33% of all unemployed Indians were educated. Today it is 66%. It has doubled. Is this how we will create a wiser? Is this how we will create a wiser workforce that is more adaptable to change from one sector to the other? This is what the state has to realize. What is the role of the state? Let me next come to a wealthier workforce. Now, of course, most of the problems of our country would be solved if we have, of course, a wealthier and more prosperous nation. But do we? What is the one thing that is required for the state to realize, to produce a wealthier workforce? Now, one of the things that endeared me to Narendra Modi in 2013 was when he said that the state, a government has no business to be in business. I thought, here is finally one leader, one politician who's blurted out the truth. Yes, the state cannot run businesses. The role of the state is to create a labor force, not to use it. Because every state throughout contemporary or other history that has tried to use a labor force has been destroyed. That is what communism is. That is what socialism is. As Margaret Thatcher said, socialism only prospers as long as you are using other people's money. It is dead when you run out of other people's money. So I thought, here is a leader who's told the truth. But then in the last 10 years, all what his government has done is to be in the business of running businesses. We have 1,830 public sector units. 1,830. 400 of them are non-functional. They're not working. They're not producing the stuff they're meant to produce. Yet they're leeching tens of thousands of our money. Every year, 21% of our annual budget allocation, which is 9 lakh crores out of 45 lakh crores, goes in propping up these 1,830 public sector units. 9 lakh crores every year. Most of them are loss-making. And whatever disinvestment we've had is we disinvest from one public sector unit and force the other PSU to buy it. Poor LIC is always held carrying the can. He's saying, मेरे को क्यों बार बार तोड़ रहे हो यार? हर चीज़ डिसीजन में मुझसे ही खरीदवा लेते हो. What's going on out here? There has been zero privatization except one Air India privatization. That happened, as you know, after decades of to and fro. There is no privatization. The state is using this labor force. The state is using this taxpayer money, creating these white elephants that are so hugely loss-making that there seems to be no recourse. The state is running, as I said, 495 hotels. What business is this of the state? The state was till recently making watches, Hindustan Scooters Limited, 1,800 of these public sector units, 400 non-functional. We've infused, the state has infused capital of 6 lakh crores into these loss-making public sector banks. We had 10 lakh NPAs of these public sector banks. The government decided, well, we don't have any NPAs anymore because they wrote off. It wasn't waived off. They've written off these NPAs. But the real issue is that even through the bankruptcy code and other bills and all, we've recovered only 10% of this. 9 lakh crores has actually been written off or waived off. We'll never get it back. And yet, every year we keep on infusing lakhs of crores. Recently, 3 lakh crores was infused in PSUs, banks. What business is it of the state to run a telephone company? 6 lakh crores infused in BSNL from time to time. Why? Why is state running these things? Where is the wealth coming from? The wealth is to be generated by you, not by the state. The state cannot generate wealth. We know this. Why do politicians believe in repeating failed experiments? If in science you are repeating a failed experiment, you will be called a fool. You probably might be sacked. But all the politicians seem to be doing is repeating failed experiment. Let me now come to the final of what the labor force should be. I've talked about more flexible labor force, a wiser labor force, a wealthier labor force. Let me talk about a healthier labor force, because health is the core of everything. If you're healthy, if your labor force is healthy, then yes, it is the prime requisite for it to be wealthy, for it to be wiser, for it to be more flexible. And admittedly, we've made tremendous steps as far as health is concerned. All our parameters are in the right direction. I gave you a few from independence, but even in the last 10 years, our MMR, IMR has increased. We have the Ayushman Bharat scheme. We have so many other public schemes that have helped as far as the health of the nation is concerned. But we are looking at 5 years. We're looking at the last 5 years, the next 5 years. Are we really looking at 2047? Are we really looking at developed India when we look at health? And here I'd like to have a show of hands. How many of you, in fact, before I have this show of hands, I'd like to tell you the calamitous situation that we haven't even realized, the state hasn't realized. It is not just going to be in, it is already in. Now, a couple of years ago, ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, brought out this brilliant set of pie charts. It was truly revealing. It said these pie charts should tell you what were the kind of diseases that afflicted Indians before the economic liberalization in 1990, and what are the kind of diseases that afflict us now. I was truly revealing. In 1990, before economic liberalization, 70% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were communicable diseases. Tuberculosis, malaria, vector-borne diseases, cholera, diarrhea, so many others, viral diseases. Because we were a poor country, cramped conditions, we didn't have enough money, we were living in drinking contaminated water, air was foul. So it was understandable. Only 30% of the diseases that afflicted us in 1990 were non-communicable diseases like heart ailments, asthma, diabetes, cancer. And now the chart has totally flipped. Now only 30% of the diseases that afflict Indians are communicable diseases. 70% of the diseases that afflict us now are non-communicable diseases. heart disease, asthma, diabetes, cancer. With increasing prosperity, with increasing wealth post-economic liberalization, we've managed to flip the chart. We don't even realize this. Under 50, India is the center for cancer, under 50, of the world. We have the highest rate of cancer. We have the highest rate of asthma. This is where I want to concentrate on. Lancet did a research a year ago, and they found out 150 million Indians are confirmed pre-diabetic. 150 million. 100 million Indians are diabetic. We don't even realize this. This is not a tsunami that's going to come to us with increasing prosperity more and more in 2030, 2040. It's already here. In terms of active lives lost, economy lost, $4 trillion worth we've lost from 2012 to 2030 we are going to, because of non-communicable diseases and what is affecting us. Do we have a monoclonal antibody that India has developed? A drug, a multi-trillion-dollar selling drug against diabetes. Do we have it now? Our R&D spend is 0.69% of our GDP, lowest amongst all BRICS nations. What is the state thinking? Is the state thinking all this will come in 2047 when we are developed and we'll take care of it? It's already here. And now I'd like to take a show of hands, because this really reveals the picture of how simple solutions there are, and yet the state is oblivious of it. How many among you know who Lakshmi Kutti is? Lakshmi Kutti. Okay, not a okay, one hand has gone up. Yes. 6 months ago, 2 hands have gone up. Excellent. 6 months ago, I would have been in the same boat as you. I didn't know who Lakshmi Kutti was. Let me give you a little bit of introduction who Lakshmi Kutti. Lakshmi Kutti is an 85-year-old frail woman. She's dwelled all her life in the forests of Western Ghats. For 60 years, she's collected this cornucopia of 500 medicinal plants. It's a library of 500 medicinal plants. Lakshmi Kutti came into prominence 4 years ago when she got the Padma Shri because of those plants. She came barefoot to Rashtrapati Bhavan, collected her Padma Shri, and almost ran away after a week. Said, I cannot, this opulence is too much for me. My life is in the forest. For 60 years, she's developed those 500 plants. What have we done with it except give her a Padma Shri? And you know what will happen? One lab or couple of labs from Western Europe or Nordic countries will descend in the Western Ghats, talk to Lakshmi Kutti, say, can we please have your medicinal library? And Lakshmi Kutti, being how she is, she'll take it, take everything. They would take that library to Sweden. They would extract the active molecule from those plants. That would be a cure for diabetes. They would get Nobel Prize for it. And at the Nobel Prize ceremony, they would thank Lakshmi Kutti. And we'll be so chuffed with it, we would give her Padma Bhushan. Or if, God forbid, she is passed away, we would give her a Bharat Ratna, posthumous. There should be 100 Lakshmi Kutti institutes of natural products. And their job should be, both state and state should be inducing the private sector, pharma companies. Your job is to find out the active ingredient, to find out the billion-trillion-dollar drug in each of these that is going to cure these non-communicable diseases, the tsunami that has already hit us. We don't have a drug. We don't have a monoclonal antibody. We have nothing to cure millions of Indians who already confirmed suffering from these ailments of non-communicable diseases. And if you think this is a figment of my imagination, that, this is in future, let me take another show of hands. How many among you know who 2UU is? 2UU. Okay, not a single hand has gone up. Again, 6 months ago, I was in the same boat. 2UU, let me tell you, is just like Lakshmi Kutti, 85-year-old woman. Of course, she's Chinese. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's dwelled all her life in a forest in China. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's been collecting all these medicinal plants. But unlike Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU extracted the active ingredient from one of her plants. And that active ingredient was the anti-malarial artemisinin, the only viable drug against malaria right now. And you got the Nobel Prize for it. This is how simple it is. This is how clear the role of the state has to be when it comes to flexibility of our labor force, when it comes to creating a wiser labor force, a wealthier labor force, and finally, a healthier labor force. But that's the role of the state. Let me talk about the confused role of us as citizens. Now, I am for a welfare state, don't get me wrong. If India was not a welfare state, we would have wiped out tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of Indians off the map. We need to be a welfare state. It is our responsibility to come up together, and we can only come up together through a welfare state. But we also need to realize that in order to distribute wealth, you need to generate wealth. A welfare state is only possible in a capitalist state, not a socialist state. Socialism cannot result in socialism, if you know what I mean. Only capitalism can. And of all the schemes, the most important ones are the schemes that have helped in this welfare state. If Modi did not build 120 million toilets, millions would have died. For example, did you know that every new toilet that has been built has saved that household an equivalent of 50,000 rupees in health costs? 100 million gas connections have been given. Did you know that the biggest cause of infant mortality was actually household pollution? And every year, 150,000 Indian lives are being directly saved through the Ujjwala scheme. I can go on and on. 120 million tap connections, because of which diarrhea deaths in infants have been reduced by half. You've given 360 million, more than the population of America, 360 million Ayushman health cards. You've treated more than the population of UK, 65 million Indians have been treated. And out-of-pocket expenditure that would bankrupt Indians has now reduced by 30%. Welfare is important. If we did not administer 1 billion Indians a vaccine twice over within a year, tens of millions would have been wiped out. If we did not give 80 crore Indians 3 meals a day for 2 years running during COVID, we would have wiped out. So welfare is important. But we need to now draw a line. What is welfare and what is freebie? If we as citizens don't draw that line, I'm afraid we as a country, forget about citizens, are staring down a black hole out of which recovery is impossible. 2 years ago, the Supreme Court asked the politician, draw that line. Tell us what is freebie, tell us what is welfare. Now, you know one thing about politicians, they will never draw that line. Because for them, every freebie is welfareism. They don't want to be accused of freebieism. But what is the state doing, and why are people silent about it? The state is indulging more and more and more in freebieism because we haven't drawn that line. We ourselves as a people are confused. We ourselves don't know what is freebieism and what is welfare. So I, for one individual, in my individual capacity, have tried to draw this line. For me, freebieism is something which is for appeasing a vote bank or appeasing a population. It is anti-national. And welfare is something which is for the nation's interests. Let me give you a few examples of freebieism and it will be very clear for you. For example, every state government, every political party promises and then delivers free pilgrimage to senior citizens. It's unbelievable. The Congress says we'll take you to Ajmer Sharif. The Samajwadi Party says we'll take you here. Some Kejriwal has this Dwarka Darshan Yatra. Lakhs of crores is spent by every political party for free pilgrimage. So why? This is freebieism. This is appeasement of a particular section, strata of the society. And it's not that the BJP is immune to it. In fact, the BJP is at the top of it. What the BJP did in Nagaland, it promised the senior citizen free pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Ayodhya to छोड़ो, Jerusalem ले जा रहे थे वो. आप हमें वोट तो Jerusalem ले जाएंगे. Is this welfareism? It's not. Let me give you another example. The BJP central government in the last 10 years has spent 8,000 crores in government ads. 8,000 crores. Kejriwal government in the last 3 years has spent 1,100 crores. Recently, the High Court castigated the Delhi-run hospitals. A person died because CAT scan could not be taken. In all the hospitals under the Delhi government, there are only 6 CAT scans. And the same government spent 1,100 crores on government ads. BJP 8,000 crores. What are these ads for? Celebrating birthday of a politician with huge mugshots, cover centerfold, everything. But citizens, every morning you read the newspaper, you don't even look at those ads. But that's the problem. When you don't castigate the politician, that still is okay. But you don't castigate the media. The media is being bribed. Because the government is spending tens of thousands of crores in bribing the media. Media gets money for those ads. And what the government does, the government don't run this news or we will drop giving you this money. This has happened. Every political party has done this. And we are absolutely blind to this. We have 3 crores as the tourism, inside the tourism department, the budget for projecting India as a tourist destination. 3 crores. That's equivalent to 6 full-page newspaper ads. And then we say we are absolutely aware of what our role should be and citizens' role should be. Finally, one of the most obvious and painfully obvious freebies that we are so unaware of is the MSP, the minimum support price that we give. This is a Soviet-era relic. And because of this relic, not only the agricultural sector has been destroyed, we are running a PSU as an agricultural sector. We are keeping on placating this lobby, giving them money, buying the food grains. And as a result of MSP, the farmers are growing only those food grains that have an MSP. And right now we have the opposition saying that every food grain should have an MSP. The amount of money the state needs to give for that would be 16 to 20 lakh crores. That is more than half of the annual allocated budget. Who is worried about this? Are we even talking about this? Because we keep on, this is like a government service. Farmers have become government servants. MSP has become like a salary. We have 100 million tons of food grains right now the government has procured. Our buffer capacity is only 30 million tons. 3 to 4 times more of the food grains we have. Who is having it? Rats in FCI godowns. When COVID struck, government could not distribute the food grains it had stored because in the bureaucracy speak, it was unedible. We had to import food grains to distribute during COVID from Ukraine and Russia. And yet, every year, we keep on giving more and more MSP, increasing the MSP. Right now, we have Haryana elections in a month. Just now, the Haryana government has added 10 more crops into the MSP bundle. Did we even know about this? We had no idea. This is what freebie is. The farmers are saying, because of faulty MSP evaluation, we have lost 45 lakh crores in the last 15 years. Stop this MSP. Which politician, which political party has the guts to do this? No political party. This is what freebie is. You want to, another example, in 2005, top economists of India, of course they are, Dr. Manmohan Singh and Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia said, this nation cannot continue with the pension scheme that it has. In 1980s, we required only 2% of our funds to give to pensions. Now it is 20%. We cannot continue. We need a national pension system, NPS. We need to junk the old pension scheme that was. The UPA brought this. Congress brought this. In 2017, another famous economist, Rahul Gandhi, more of an economist than Dr. Manmohan Singh, said, if you vote for us in Himachal, we will junk the pension scheme, new pension scheme. We will revert to the old pension scheme that Congress had brought. Congress won. And right now, 85% of Himachal's tax revenue are going in propping up the old pension scheme. This is freebie. And as a result, because Congress won, 7 other states, including AAP, including some BJP, have reverted to the old pension scheme. Are we talking about this? Are these issues that the citizens are talking? Unless we ourselves remove this cloud of confusion, how can we always keep on blaming the state that justifiably needs to be blamed for its own cloud of confusion? I'm sorry I've left all of you very despondent, but the facts are, always remember, if we realize the glass is half full, that is the only reason why we can be satisfied when the glass is brimming, and it is our role to brim it to capacity. I shall end there. Thank you very much.